Hi, everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to talk more about positive acute angles, but this time we're going to talk about how to find their exact values. So here are two variations of the special right triangles that you learned in geometry. You learned a 30, 60, 90 and a 45, 45, 90. And what these triangles give us are values of sine, cosine, and tangent of 30, 45, and 60 degrees. So let me just show you where I got a couple of these numbers from, and then we'll move on from there. So let's just say this one, for example, sine of 30. If here is 30 degrees, this is my opposite side, and 2 is my hypotenuse. I know that sine, right, from SOHCAHTOA, I know that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So the opposite is 1, and the hypotenuse is 2. 1/2 works out for me. And then if I'm asking for cosine of 30, we would just do cosine, which is ca, so adjacent, right? So here's my adjacent. So adjacent would be radical 3 over my hypotenuse, which would be 2. Rad 3 over 2 works nicely. And then same thing would work if I did tangent, and also if I changed my viewpoint and then said, okay, let's start from 60 and find the rest. And then obviously over here, if I'm using 45 degrees, let's try picking one of them. I know we didn't do tangent yet, so let's do tangent, so TOA. So since there's two 45-degree angles here, it doesn't matter which one we're using. So I'm going to use this one. So this is my opposite, this is my adjacent, and this is my hypotenuse. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. So 1 over 1 reduces to 1. And that's it. That's how we get these numbers. So you have a choice when it comes to Algebra 2. You can choose to memorize these special triangles. And if I ask you for tangent of 60 or cos of 60 or any of these, you would have to do SOHCAHTOA every single time. So to me, that's a lot of work. So there's a nice little trick that I can show you to make an exact value chart that we can use. So let's talk about how it works. We're going to put sine, then cos, then tan. So the trig function goes on the left. Then on the top, we're going to put the angle measurements in order from least to greatest. So we've got a 30, a 60, and a 45. So in order, the 30 would come first, then the 45, and then the 60. And I'm going to teach you a little trick to memorize all of these so you don't have to memorize the exact values. So the rule goes, follow along with me, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. So I just did this part, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Then we're going to put them all over 2. Then we're going to take the square root of everything on the top except for the ones. So square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 2, square root of 3. Why I don't put a square root here and here is because the square root of 1 is just 1. And then the last row we just have to memorize is rad 3 over 3, 1, and then rad 3. And that's my last row. So it's not too bad to memorize. We'll practice it in class, but the more you practice it, the more it'll be easy. But I think it's quicker to memorize this than it is to memorize those triangles. All right, let's put this into practice now. How are we going to use this? So in this problem, the directions, I put an exact value chart so we can use it, says find the exact value of each. Rationalize the denominator whenever necessary. So we literally have to do exactly the same thing that we did yesterday. Quarters are for sodas, and then we're going to use the exact value chart because it says to find the exact value. So remember with quarters are for sodas, let's write that down. Q, R, F, S. We can't do quarters are for sodas until our angle is in between 0 and 360. So negative 240 is not going to work. We have to use coterminal. So we have to add 360 first. So we get sine of, I'm just going to add it real quick, 120. So this is me using coterminal. So 120 is much better to work with. So let's draw a sketch. 120 we know is an angle in quadrant 2, right? If this is 90 and this is 180, from here to here is 120. So quadrant 2. How do I find a reference angle in quadrant 2? Remember, the reference angle is the space that would continue this to get to 180. So 120 plus 60 gives me 180. You can know the rule, which is just to take 180 and subtract the angle, 120, which will give me 60. F stands for function. The function we're dealing with here, people, is sine. So we're going to say sine. And then last but not least, the S stands for SIGN. So what's positive, what's negative here? So all students take calc. Since we're in quadrant 2, sine, which is the function we're talking about, is positive. So remember, we read it from the bottom up. So sine of 120 is equivalent to positive sine of 60, right? So this is the stuff we did yesterday. This answer is a function of a positive acute angle. But our directions here are asking us to find the exact value. So we have to keep going. So this is where we look at our exact value chart. So sine of 60 degrees is simply rad 3 over 2. So this is my final answer. This is my exact value. So make sure you write that distinction in your notebooks, because on the test we could say find a positive acute angle or find the exact value, and you're going to have to know when to stop here or keep going. All right, let's try one more problem. Problem number 2. So same kind of concept. We need to do quarters or for sodas, but a couple things that I notice here is that my angle is not in degrees. So we first have to convert it to degrees. And I don't know if my angle is big enough or small enough, so let's try to do that first. So 7 pi over 6, to change to degrees, we're going to multiply by 180 over pi. And then we're going to multiply tops with tops, bottoms with bottoms. So we're going to multiply 7 times 180, which will be 1,260. And then we'll tack on the pi. And then on the bottom, we're going to do 6 times pi, and that's going to give me 6 pi. We'll notice that the pi's will cancel. So then we'll get 120 divided by 6, which gives me 210. So 210 is actually perfect. I don't even need a coterminal angle because that's in between 0 and 360. So we need to find, rewriting this, secant of 210 degrees. So now we can go over to my quarters or for sodas. So Q stands for quadrant. So if we want to draw a quick sketch, 210 is going to be in the third quadrant because we have 180 and then we have 270. So this is my 210. So quadrant 3. Now the reference angle is a little bit harder to see in this one, but the reference angle is where the terminal side of the angle is and the x-axis. So this one, it's a little bit easier if you know the rule, which we're going to take 210, the angle, and subtract 180. If you do that, you'll get 30. The function that we're dealing with here is secant, right? That hasn't changed. And now we need to find the S, the sign, SIGN. So let's write all students take calc. So T stands for that tangent is positive, as well as its reciprocal, which is cotangent. So since we're dealing with secant, we know that it will be negative. So we first read it from the bottom up. So secant of 210 is equivalent to negative secant of 30. Right? Negative secant of 30. And this, by the way, is not the answer, but this is the answer for the positive acute. So we can write that, positive acute angle. Here's my symbol for angle. So if I want to find secant of 30, I have to go back up to the top. Now, I don't see secant anywhere on this list, but I see its reciprocal cosine. So I'm going to put secant there because we know that it's reciprocal. And I'm looking for 30 degrees. So 30 is here. So therefore, it's going to be rad 3 over 2. But because it's secant, we have to flip it. So this is going to be 2 over rad 3. And then don't forget to bring the negative. So be very careful, right? Cosine of 30 is rad 3 over 2. So if I want secant, I just have to flip it. And then the last and final thing you have to do with these problems is you have to rationalize the denominator. We're not allowed to have that radical there on the bottom. So we multiply top and bottom by rad 3 and multiply straight across. So negative 2 times rad 3 is just negative 2 rad 3. Rad 3 times rad 3 is rad 9, which reduces to 3, right? Square root of 9 is 3. So this is my exact value. All right. I know that was a lot for today, so we'll end there. If you have questions, please ask us in class tomorrow. Have a good night.